You know what's wild? $500,000. Like when you actually sit down and think about it, that number feels completely out of reach. If you're making what, $50,000 or $60,000 a year, maybe $70,000 if you've been at your job for a while. You look at that number and you think, there's no way. That's for people who make six figures, or people who got lucky with stocks, or people who inherited money. And so you don't even try. You just accept that building serious wealth isn't for people like you. Except here's the thing, and this is what kept me up at night for years. I kept meeting people who did it. Regular people. Teachers, nurses, electricians, administrative assistants, people making perfectly average incomes who somehow managed to build net worths of $500,000, $700,000, even over $1 million by the time they retired. And I couldn't figure out how. Like the math didn't seem to work in my head. My name is Frank, and I spend way too much time analyzing wealth patterns, studying people's financial decisions, and trying to understand why some folks making $55,000 a year end up millionaires, while others making $150,000 end up broke. And what I discovered completely changed how I think about money and what's actually possible on an average income. And before we dive in, if you're finding value in this kind of content, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps more people discover these ideas. And honestly, it helps me keep making videos like this. All right, let's get into it. Because here's what nobody tells you. Building a $500,000 net worth on an average salary isn't just possible. It's actually pretty straightforward. Not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but straightforward. The path is clear. The math works. It just requires doing things that feel counterintuitive, and it requires patience, which is probably the hardest part. So today I want to walk you through exactly how this works. Not in some theoretical way, but with actual numbers, actual timelines, and actual strategies that regular people use to build serious wealth. And I'm going to show you why this is probably more achievable than you think, even if you're starting from zero right now. The math that changes everything. Okay, let's start with the part that sounds too good to be true, but isn't. If you invest $500 a month, which I know sounds like a lot, but stay with me, and you do it consistently for 30 years, and you get an average return of 8% per year, which is actually below the stock market's historical average, you end up with about $745,000. I remember the first time I ran this calculation, I thought I did something wrong. I plugged it into the calculator again. Same result. And that's when it clicked. The reason most people don't build wealth isn't because they can't afford to, it's because they don't believe the math. They don't believe that $500 a month could possibly turn into $750,000. But that's the power of compound interest. It's not magic. It's just math. When your money earns returns, and then those returns earn returns, and those returns on returns earn returns, the numbers start doing things that feel impossible. Einstein supposedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. He probably didn't actually say that, but whoever did was onto something. Now you might be thinking, okay, Frank, but I don't have $500 a month to invest. And that's fair. So let's look at it differently. What if you started with $200 a month? Over 30 years at 8%, that becomes about $300,000. Still not $500,000, but honestly, $300,000 is life-changing money for most people. That's a paid-off house. That's early retirement. That's never worrying about money again. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to start at $500 a month and stay there forever. Most people I know who built serious wealth on average incomes started small, like really small. Maybe $50 or $100 a month in their 20s. Then, as they got raises, as they paid off debts, as they got smarter about their spending, they increased it. $150 a month, then $250, then $400. The amount matters less than the consistency and the time. The income side nobody talks about. Here's something that took me way too long to figure out. Your starting salary matters way less than what you do with your raises. Like, way less. Let's say you start a job making $45,000 a year. Pretty average, right? And let's say you get a 3% raise every year, which is also pretty average. In 10 years, you'll be making about $60,000. That's an extra $15,000 a year compared to where you started. Most people, when they get that raise, they immediately increase their spending to match. Nicer apartment, newer car, better restaurants. They're making more money, so they spend more money, and their bank account looks exactly the same as it did 10 years ago. This is lifestyle inflation, and it's the silent killer of wealth building. But the people who build $500,000 net worths on average incomes, they do something different. They keep living like they make $45,000 even when they're making $60,000. And that $15,000 difference, that goes straight to investing every single year. I know this sounds boring. Actually, it sounds worse than boring. It sounds like deprivation, like you're working harder, getting promoted, earning more money, but not getting to enjoy any of it. But here's the thing. You are enjoying it, just in a different way. You're enjoying the feeling of watching your net worth grow. You're enjoying the security of knowing you could quit your job if you needed to. You're enjoying the freedom that comes from having options. And it's not forever. Once you hit your goals, once you've built that foundation, you can increase your lifestyle. But if you increase your lifestyle first, you never get the foundation. You're just stuck on the treadmill forever. The big expenses that make or break you. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, housing and cars. Because honestly, these two categories are where most people either succeed or fail at building wealth. The average American spends about 30% to 40% of their income on housing. But the people building serious wealth on average incomes, they're usually spending 20% to 25%. They're living with roommates longer, or they're buying smaller houses in less trendy neighborhoods, or they're renting when everyone else is buying because the math makes more sense. And I get it. Housing is emotional. It's not just about the numbers. You want a nice place to live. You want to feel like you're moving forward in life, not backward. But here's what I've noticed. The people who stay in the cheaper apartment for an extra 5 years while they build their investment portfolio, they end up in much nicer houses eventually, and they own them outright. The people who stretch for the nice apartment right away, they're still renting it 20 years later. Cars are even worse, honestly. The average new car payment in America is over $700 a month now. That's insane. That's $8,400 a year that could be going into investments. Over 30 years, that's literally $1.3 million in lost wealth, if you consider what that money could have grown to. I drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic for years while I was building my net worth. And you know what? It got me to work just fine. It was reliable, cheap to maintain, cheap to insure. Was it cool? No. Did I care? Not really, because every time I didn't have a car payment, I was investing that money instead. And now I could buy whatever car I want. But the funny thing is, I still don't care about cars. I'd rather have the investments. The investment strategy that actually works. Let's talk about where to actually put your money, because this is where people get paralyzed. They think investing is complicated, that you need to pick stocks, that you need to watch CNBC, that you need some kind of special knowledge. But the people I know who built $500,000 net worths on average incomes, almost all of them did the same thing. They invested in low-cost index funds, and they never touched them. That's it. That's the whole strategy. An index fund is basically a basket of stocks that represents the entire market. Instead of trying to pick which companies will do well, you just buy a tiny piece of every company. The S&P 500, for example, is the 500 largest companies in America. When you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you own a tiny piece of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, all of them. And over long periods of time, the stock market has returned about 10% per year on average. Some years it's up 30%, some years it's down 20%, but over 20 or 30 years, it averages out to about 10%. I use 8% in my calculations to be conservative, but even at 8%, the math works beautifully. The hard part isn't picking the right investments. The hard part is not panicking when the market crashes, because it will crash. Multiple times over 30 years. In 2008, the market dropped 50%. In 2020, it dropped 30% in a month. And every time that happens, everyone freaks out and wants to sell. But the people who build wealth, they don't sell. They keep investing through the crashes. Actually, they get excited about crashes because now they're buying stocks on sale. It's completely counterintuitive, but it's the only way this works. You have to be able to stomach the volatility, the side income advantage. Here's something interesting. Most people who build $500,000 net worths on average incomes have some kind of side income at some point. Not always, but often. And it doesn't have to be huge. Maybe they freelance a few hours a week. Maybe they drive for Uber occasionally. Maybe they sell stuff on eBay. Maybe they have a small online business. The amount varies wildly, but let's say it's an extra $500 a month on average. That extra $500 a month, if it all goes to investing, that's the difference between $300,000 and $600,000 over 30 years. It's massive. And the beautiful thing about side income is that it doesn't touch your lifestyle. Your main job covers your living expenses. The side income is pure investment fuel. You never get used to having it as spending money, so you never miss it when it goes into your investment account. I'm not saying everyone needs a side hustle. Some people are perfectly happy with their jobs and don't want to work more. That's fine. But if you're serious about building wealth faster and you have some extra time and energy, side income is one of the most powerful levers you can pull. The timeline and milestones. Let's talk about what this actually looks like over time, because I think that helps make it feel more real. If you're 25 and you start investing $400 a month, by 30, you'll have about $30,000. That might not sound like a lot, but it's momentum. It's proof that this works. You're already ahead of 90% of people your age. By 35, you'll have about $75,000. Now it's getting interesting. You could put a down payment on a house with that if you wanted, or you could keep it invested and let it grow. By 40, you'll have about $150,000. This is usually where people start to really believe in the process, because the numbers are getting big enough to notice. And this is also where compound interest starts to take over. You'll be earning almost as much from your investments each year as you're contributing. By 45, you'll have about $260,000. By 50, about $415,000. And by 55, you'll cross $500,000. So it takes 30 years. That's the part nobody wants to hear, right? Everyone wants the shortcut, the hack, the way to do it in 5 years. But there isn't one. Not for average people with average incomes. This is the path. It's slow, it's boring, it works. And here's the thing. 30 years is going to pass anyway. You're either going to be 55 with $500,000, or you're going to be 55 with nothing. The time is going to pass regardless. The only question is what you're doing during that time. Conclusion. So that's how you build a $500,000 net worth on an average income. You invest consistently, you keep your major expenses low, you resist lifestyle inflation, you don't panic during market crashes, and you give it time, a lot of time. It's not sexy. It's not fast. There's no secret trick that financial gurus don't want you to know. It's just math and patience and discipline applied over decades. But here's what I want you to understand. This is possible for you. I don't care if you're making $40,000 or $70,000 or somewhere in between. I don't care if you're starting at 25 or 35 or 45. The principles are the same. The math works at any income level, at any age. You just have to start, and you have to keep going. And I know it feels overwhelming. I know that $500 a month or even $200 a month might feel impossible right now. So start with $50. Start with $25. Just start. Open the investment account. Set up the automatic transfer. Put something in there, anything, and then figure out how to increase it over time. Because here's what I've learned watching people do this. It gets easier. The first year is hard because you're building the habit and you're not seeing much progress. The second year is still hard, but a little less so. By the 5th year, it's automatic. By the 10th year, you're addicted to watching it grow. By the 20th year, you can't imagine living any other way. And then one day you're going to wake up and check your account and realize you did it. You built a $500,000 net worth on an average income. You're financially secure. You have options. You have freedom. And the crazy part is, once you get there, you'll realize that the money itself wasn't even the best part. The best part was becoming the kind of person who could do this. Someone disciplined, patient, intentional. Someone who plays the long game while everyone else is chasing quick wins. So start today, not tomorrow, not next month, not when you get your next raise. Today. Even if it's just $25. Because 30 years from now, you're going to be so grateful that you did. The choice is yours.